In 2016, U.S. diplomats in Cuba began reporting strange symptoms: piercing headaches, dizziness, and an unexplained sense of pressure in their heads. Over time, more cases emerged, spreading beyond Cuba and fueling theories of high-tech weapons and espionage. Today, we explore the unsettling mystery of Havana Syndrome. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the supernatural. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me, hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
What is this, some kind of chemical warfare? What is this?
Oh, we're on to something now.
Absolutely terrifying, though. Just chemical warfare in general. You know? The fact that someone could potentially have some kind of chemical that if you detonate over, I don't know, a mile above a city or something like that, just could be lethal. I don't know.
Right.
And like, it's terrifying. It's frightening. And you know, there's some scientists, I've talked about it before, in a lab cooking up stuff they're not supposed to be cooking up right now as we speak.
Of course, there's going to be sinister experiments all over the place. You know, big-brained individuals putting together chemicals, as you say, that should not be put together, and then crop dusting a bunch of people and then seeing what happens. You're onto something. That is one of the potential answers here, but I'm going to be very curious because we're going to talk about Havana Syndrome, how it kind of got into the zeitgeist, where it began, and it's very, very recent. But most of this episode is going to be exploring the investigations and the theories that happen from all these different studies and different angles. So I'm curious, Fredo, what your instinct's going to be as we proceed, what your gut instinct. Right now you're on chemicals. I'm curious if that's going to change.
Yeah. I mean, look, chemicals was my gut instinct. Obviously, there could be some type of, it could be as easy as like certain types of lighting that's giving some kind of sensory overload or just things like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious to see the different studies. I think, the format seems pretty cool right now in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
And excited to see what comes out of this.
Yeah.
And like if we have the usual, just kind of like placebo effect where people are just like, oh my God, everyone I know is experiencing that. I too am experiencing that.
Yes. I'm just going to tell you right now, there's a little piece of that.
Yeah, always is.
You know, and here at Red Web, we're always saying everything is answered by placebo. And if it's not placebo, it is placebo because we've broadened the definition. I'm still trying to contact Merriam-Webster to see what we could do about getting that catch-all definition on there. But you're right. The exploration today is going to be a little bit different structured. I'm going to give you the overview, a crash course on what Havana Syndrome is, when we first noticed it, when it was being reported, and news kind of comes all the way up to this year, 2025, before it kind of officially closes.
Wow.
And then normally we talk about the investigations before moving into the theories, but because there's so many different angles of analysis and research happening here, I think what we're going to do is break it down by investigation theory combos and go through 7 different angles behind this mysterious case.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
So we're going to get all into the government stuff. There's some high-level research, and then of course you got people on the internet just firing from the hip with all sorts of wild theories, you know, because people just like, there's a lust for the unknown, but there's also this kind of weird love to just fill in answers. You know, I don't know, I've got an answer, let me just shove that in there. That makes sense. So we'll talk about all of it. And of course, I would be remiss to not shout out a few of our illustrious task force members here at the HQ for supporting us directly. We've got 2 buff scientists I want to name. We got Matt Borosic and Taku Kajiya. So thank you guys so much for bringing your buff, rippling minds to the table, kind of knocking a few beakers around, teaching us what chemicals actually are.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the more and more feared squonks. I mean,
there it is. Give me that list.
You're after them.
Give me that list.
So here goes the hit list for this week.
Okay.
Is Zarathustra, Sabrina Hall,
got it.
And I'm so sorry, Azrael.
Okay. There it is. There it is. That's 3 names.
The shout out has become a hit list. You guys are all future puddles and you don't even know it. I'm so sorry.
I'm on the hunt. You're in my little death note.
But you can become a task force member by going to redwebpod.com there for your direct support. We are only able to do this podcast because of that support. You will get you stuff like ad-free versions of this podcast, monthly exclusives, and of course, things like the monthly store discounts. We have Discord events and all sorts of stuff. And of course, we have Mystery Madness going on right now where everybody can go vote on their favorite mysteries. 64 mysteries enter the boxing ring, okay, and only one will come out champion. And so we want to hear from you guys. We're going to have a bunch of bonus videos all throughout this month recapping each of the rounds of that. But, we also have a pilot version of the video podcast that came out earlier this month. There's just a lot cooking up over there.
Yeah, there is.
We want to thank you all so much for your ongoing support. Now, with that, let me take you all the way back to 2016, Fredo. So Havana Syndrome, right out the gate, it is classified as an anomalous health incident or an AHI. It was first reported by its name, right, in Havana, Cuba in 2016. The first individuals affected by this condition were reportedly CIA officers and USA embassy officials living in Havana at the time.
See, those are people that have, access to things potentially that most people, civilians, don't have access to. And then on top of that, those are people that could potentially be targets for other governments, etc.
Absolutely. POI, persons of interest,
Yeah.
or intrigue, whichever you prefer. But in total, this initial wave included around 24 people reporting similar symptoms and experiences. Each case was characterized by an acute onset of extreme symptoms, the first being a loud noise accompanied by head and ear pain. Now, Fredo, I'm very curious if you've experienced anything kind of like this. I'm not saying you've had Havana Syndrome, but I'm curious if you have had experiences with any of this and you can ground this with some of your gut checks. So,
knock on wood. I do not actually ever really experience headaches. I know I'm very lucky in that regard. It's something that rarely happens to me.
Wait, Christian, do you get headaches?
Oh, yeah. You kidding me?
I was going to say, I think there's something in the Task Force HQ water. I don't get headaches either. I'm very, very grateful.
You know what's happening, Trevor? He doesn't drink the water. He doesn't drink the water.
He does. It's just, that's it.
That's what it is.
I don't hydrate. I just don't.
That's what happens when you don't hydrate. You know what I'm saying? We're drinking the water. We don't get headaches. No, I just get severe allergies where Mother Nature makes love to my face raw.
Oh.
I was going to say F my face raw, but that's what I was going to do.
Oh, okay. Well, that's an analogy I've never heard before. So in addition to this headache, these ear pains, some heard that piercing ringing, others heard what they described as a buzzing sound, and some heard what was like a wind whipping sound. If you've ever driven down the highway, you've got the window down like a crack, and you start to hear that whom, whum, 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 whum.
Yes.
I think that's what they're trying to describe.
Oh, that's annoying.
Oh, yeah. So that's the kind of initial sound that then kicked on the rest of these symptoms. So those affected experienced a range of other symptoms in addition to that pain after this sudden noise. These included nausea, tinnitus, vertigo, blurred or impaired vision, intense headaches, and ear pain, of course. Now, what's interesting is that others reported that some of these symptoms actually became chronic, affecting patients for months after the initial onset. And lingering symptoms reportedly included insomnia and chronic headaches after this initial outburst of symptoms. After these reports, the Trump administration evacuated all non-essential personnel working at the embassy, citing these as attacks. And what I thought was so interesting is that it does feel like it could be an attack. And I wanted to dig deeper because attacks definitely has a pretty alarming undertone to it. And it is why there's so much theories happening behind the scenes on this, like trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. In October of 2017, Trump's chief of staff, John Kelly, told reporters, quote, "We believe the government could stop the attacks on our diplomats." This is in reference to the Cuban government, not ours. Trump himself then also called them, quote, "very unusual attacks." So since these initial reports, over 1,000 people have reportedly been affected by Havana Syndrome. In fact, according to NPR, as recently as March 2023, some, quote, 1,500 cases among U.S. government staffers have now been reported worldwide, end quote. So again, we're starting with a few dozen people in Havana, Cuba, but now we're talking about a much more widespread. We'll talk about more of the countries in a second, but as of 2023, 7 years on, 1,500 individuals coming to the table reporting similar symptoms.
Jeez. Don't like that. Also, the parallel that this episode has to the current state of illnesses that are spreading around right now is unfortunate. It's just there's little outbreaks of little things here and there happening, and it's one of the worst flu seasons in a very long time.
Yeah.
Everyone is catching some kind of illness.
There's illnesses passing around. I mean, even just recently, as of recording this episode, it's in our own backyard, so it's hard to not say it.
Right.
But measles.
Yes.
San Antonio, here in Austin, lots of things popping off right now.
I ain't going outside. I ain't even getting close to a little child, bro. The little child is crossing the street on the same side of the street. I'm crossing. I'm getting away. I'm afraid
Hold on,
of kids
someone
right
knocks
now.
at the door. Open the door. Girl Scout cookies, would you like?
Hell
It's
no.
going for a good cause.
Hell no. I love me Thin Mint. Put it in the fridge. Eat it when it's cold.
Put it in the mail.
I'm just like, look, man, I'll slip cash through the door or something like that, and then you could just put the box there, and I'll wipe it down with hand sanitizer.
Okay.
Everyone's just sick everywhere.
Christian, this man is Jake Gyllenhaal, Bubble Boy.
Put me in a bubble right now. Yes. It's crazy, man. Everyone I know is getting sick. It's wild.
Now at store.redwebpod.com. Get your own bubble. Might be sold out. Supply is one. Alfredo needs it. Listen, Mother Nature's coming for you either way. She'll
Yeah,
slip through the
true.
cracks in your windows while you sleep. Come for that sinus. But what's drawn so much attention to Havana Syndrome at this point is it being a medical mystery, and it's affecting a lot of people. But when you look at the populace that it's affecting, it seems to largely center around U.S. intelligence personnel and their families. You clock this right out the gate. You know what we're working with. It's a unsolved mysteries, sometimes conspiracy podcast, and so you clock the pattern right away. And for some of those affected, the chronic symptoms have been severe enough that it's forced them actually into retirement.
Whoa.
Now, I haven't looked into the further details. I do want to say it could be that these are, older individuals that might be ready for retirement. Something like this can hit older individuals more impactfully, right?
True.
So I don't want to give false pretense that this is a youthful CIA agent of the age of 32 that's suddenly kicking it, But it is a pattern worth pointing out. So now, of course, adding fuel to this conspiracy fire is the fact that further details regarding the initial medical investigations have, of course, been kept classified by the CIA. Anytime something is kept classified, people got to get their fingers in there and answer the questions, right? Too many gaps, people get uncomfortable.
Yep.
I need the answers. Now, interestingly, as I kind of indicated, while this seems to have begun in Cuba, cases have since really traversed the world into several different countries. We're talking Russia, Colombia, China, Taiwan, Austria, Germany, among others. And so, yes, it is called Havana Syndrome, but it's not believed to be originating out of Havana. It's not believed that it's contagious in any way. So it suggests that whatever is causing the onset of this illness is not specific to any one region. And I think that only raises more intrigue, more desire to find answers, because it starts to feel more like, okay, it is US intelligence agencies and their families around the world. How does that not kind of feel like some sort of attack? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's got to be an initial gut check, right? Especially if it's just jumping essentially agencies.
Right.
It's a frightening thought,
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're not knowing what you're impacted by. Was it a foreign adversary? Are you being poisoned in some way? Is a chemical sleeping through the cracks? All sorts of questions come to mind, and a lot of those questions generate fear, of course. Now, what complicates this matter even further is that survivors of this condition have reported that it was difficult for them to access appropriate care and testing because, again, we don't really fully know what we're working with or how to fix it. So some said that they were unfamiliar with military health systems, and that made it difficult for them to schedule appointments and receive care. Of course, the mystery behind it all also added complications. Now, others reported that they were not appropriately cared for by medical professionals due to the strangeness of the condition that baffled many medical professionals. This would eventually delay testing, making it more difficult for researchers and investigators to find the root cause for the condition. And to me, this only opens up room for all theorists to step in, as I always kind of say, and propose conclusions based on assumptions when you have nothing else to work with.
See, like, being sick, having to go to the doctors, that all sucks. It's absolutely terrifying if you go and the doctor and like other colleagues are like, I don't know. You know what I mean? And I had that happen to me probably like 5 years ago. I was laying down in bed with with the missus, and then I spotted these red dots that were all over like the bottom of my ankles.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, that's not good. Let's see what happens. And then within a couple hours, it spread to just below my knees.
Okay.
And I was like, I gotta go to the ER.
Yeah.
I went to the ER and they're like, we don't know what it is. And eventually they started all turning into bumps. So I went back again, and then they were like, oh, these are chigger bites, little bugs. And I guess I was like, I was in the woods earlier that day, and I guess they just feasted on me. And so, you know, when we shot Weird Place, those overnight shoots,
yeah,
every time we had a break, I bolted to the restroom and rubbed like anti-itch cream on my leg. So when you watch Weird Place, I have hundreds of bites on both of my legs the entire time.
Oh, are those things that like burrow under your skin a little bit?
Yeah. There's burrow on your skin a little bit, and they'll secrete a little bit of their saliva, and it just becomes super itchy. But it was so early in the stage that it was just red dots, and they didn't quite know what it was. And
that's so weird.
It had to develop more for them to go, okay, those are chigger bites.
Okay.
And I was like, that's why I found out that those are little creatures that exist in Texas. I was like, thanks. But it was terrifying because I'm just sitting there like, what the hell's happening to my legs?
Right.
And so like I could kind of see what these people are just like, I don't know what I'm experiencing. Other people are experiencing it too. And then the professionals have no idea, and you'd think that you're a CIA agent, so you have, the backing of just, I don't know, maybe the government, or maybe like, they're just taking a little bit extra closer of a look for you. But then also to have the icing on the cake there was just like having issues with, you said that to get their medical stuff in line to even like see doctors. I'm like, that's just a whole fiasco.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of unsettling when the expert in the room is somebody you need to rely on to figure out this kind of spooky situation, and they don't have that answer. And it's not because they don't know, but sometimes it's because it could be a dozen things.
Right.
Some worse than the others. But glad you got that figured out, because I would have sat there and been like, well, the doctors don't know. Maybe I'm impregnated by some sort of micro alien.
Oh, God.
And maybe it's got a 6-year ingestment period. And so soon your legs are going to be kind of dripping with like little alien worms that are going to come out of your legs. Yeah. That's so, well, at least you have answers. This one's still unsolved. Could you imagine you had a chronic condition with itchy legs and you just never knew?
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be on my mind all the time.
Yeah. But that is essentially Havana Syndrome. Now I really want to explore some of the investigations and subsequent theories, because there are a lot of different angles, a lot to talk about, and as always, some frustrations along the way. I'm not talking about, again, the classic skull going missing in the mail, but I am talking about like people not communicating interdepartmentally, whether it be for classification purposes or whether it just be, I don't know, just bad communication, but we'll get into all of it. So we're going to start first in 2017. The United States State Department concluded that those affected by the initial symptoms were deliberately targeted and attacked by some sort of sound device, or were otherwise exposed to something specific that caused these symptoms. A very broad and vague claim, but that's kind of their hypothesis to begin with.
Well, how did it affect family members?
If they were in the room with them, if it was more of an environmental thing. So it's not contagious, but if they're traveling, right? If you're working at a U.S. embassy, you're going to be living there for at least a chunk of time. And just for the sake of clarity, the State Department is the U.S. federal agency that handles foreign affairs, which is why, of course, they're motivated to dive in on this and try to figure things out. Additionally, the State Department claimed that they did not believe Cuba was responsible for the attacks and that the root cause of the attacks was still being investigated. The reason they said that Cuba was dismissed as a potential suspect was due to the lack of evidence, but also because Cuba's government did seem to be in cooperation with the investigation, helping in any way possible, which does seem to indicate that they have nothing to hide. However, they did not specify what sort of sound device or what specifically individuals might have been exposed to that would cause such symptoms. Of course, there may be reasons to maintain secrecy here, that they wouldn't just come running to the public with every final detail, especially with the recency of everything, right? This is in 2017, just a year later. But it does leave this theory feeling more of a hypothesis, a starting ground, rather than a theory which is a little bit more bolstered by facts and evidence. Moving on now to the University of Michigan and Zhejiang University. So in March of 2018, there was a study done by both of these universities. This study concluded that intermodulation distortion between ultrasonic signals could have been coming from malfunctioning or misplaced Cuban surveillance equipment and caused the initial sounds heard by those affected. So in short, they have a paper about this. I pulled that up and I started reading a little bit. Their paper discusses how inaudible ultrasonic signals may have kind of essentially interfered with one another and created that intermodulation distortion, otherwise known as like the waves in the air are kind of impeding with one another. So when two waves intersect, there is distortion. Sometimes the waves add to one another and their amplitude becomes greater. Sometimes they cancel each other out, which is what noise canceling headphones do. But basically, this intermodulation distortion led to audible signals, which themselves led to these symptoms. It's a very technical paper trying to kind of simplify it.
Yeah, I mean, see, is sensory thing I was talking about. It's just wild how different, it could be light sources or sound frequencies can kind of affect your body.
Absolutely. We've talked about that at ghost hunts of all things, when you have heavy electromagnetic signals or frequencies in the area. That tends to be associated with feelings of anxiety, sometimes dread, sometimes depression, sometimes the feeling that there is a ghost or a supernatural entity nearby. And so when you look at a lot of ghost hunts that try to debunk things and analyze things, you'll find that they're heavily associated with old electronics, or sometimes there's like some sort of weird electronic thing happening in the walls or what have you that you just don't know. And that can really play a lot on your mind. Mm-hmm. But with this theory in mind, I want to back up a little bit because they kind of had some motivation to go down this route and test things out. So AP News published an article back in 2017, which included a recording of what some of the U.S. Embassy employees heard in Havana. In theory, this sound is what caused Havana Syndrome. They posted that then online, and these researchers were essentially attempting to reverse engineer the source of this sound. And they concluded, by the best means possible, they're saying, hey, if there were ultrasonic, inaudible spy equipment in the room, and those signals were interfering with one another, and then created this accidental audible sound, that matches as best as we can recreate the sound released by AP News.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we'll come back around to this audio clip because I want you to be able to hear it, but there's a theory that centers around it more specifically. So all that is to say is they're trying to reverse engineer this sound that has been published. And I do want to quote one of the people who helped co-author this paper, University of Michigan Associate Professor of Computer Science and Engineering, Kevin Fu. And he says this, quote, "We've demonstrated a scenario in which the harm might have been unintentional, a byproduct of a poorly engineered ultrasonic transmitter that was meant to be covert. A malfunctioning device that was supposed to inaudibly steal information or eavesdrop on conversation with ultrasonic transmission seems more plausible than a sonic weapon. That said, our results do not rule out either potential causes." End quote. So now he's talking about, yes, we think it's spy equipment listening in, but we can't rule out sonic weapons. Now, the wrinkle for this particular theory is that it does not explain the other symptoms that followed. And there was no public confirmation of any malfunctioning or misplaced equipment, though again, that could be classified. But then to me, there's the other bigger wrinkle. All the other international cases. Were these similarly malfunctioning surveillance equipment? Was this happening all over the world? In all these different places?
Exactly.
Possible, but I don't know. Or are they all working with the same spy equipment? and that spy equipment is malfunctioning in this specific way, right?
That's wild. Imagine just like, I don't know, maybe a company made one spy equipment and it's bought by a lot of different company and a lot of different places, and then it's just like, oh, hey, by the way, you might want to recall that.
What? It's already in the statue in the room.
Right.
Oh, no. And then everyone starts puking.
Oh, God.
I wonder, is there like a Temu for spy equipment that they all went to?
Oh, my God.
You know what I mean?
Damn.
I don't know. So that's the biggest question to me is like, if it's happening all over the world, it does kind of make this a little bit more difficult, but man, is it interesting?
Yes.
It really is compelling.
It is. But it's just like it starts to enter the realm of like it's reaching, you know, or just like it's at that point, it's got to be like a huge coincidence, like a massive coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Part of me is kind of like, I'm never super keen on a scientific paper trying to get to a certain result, but the fact that they were upfront about saying, hey, if this is the sound that's causing Havana Syndrome, we as computer engineers are going to assess ways that might happen. And they found that ultrasonic signals can interfere with one another to create that sound. And it has a very similar profile. And therefore, I think that it is a reasonable conclusion. I don't think they forced that conclusion to happen. But yeah, I think it's just as interesting as, I don't know, it feels like a movie. Like,
Right. It really does.
but it also almost feels too good for reality. I don't know, you know, but it's very compelling. Hey, Task Force, I just wanted to take a few seconds to say thank you because this episode of Red Web is entirely sponsored by you guys, the Task Force at redwebpod.com. Now, I know you guys have heard me talk about this every week, but seriously, I love our community over there, and it is genuinely the #1 way to support our podcast. We have ads, we have merch, you can support us by reviewing us on podcast platforms. All of these things help our show so much, but the #1 way to keep us going, exploring mysteries, keeping this community alive and thriving is supporting us directly at redwebpod.com. In exchange for your direct support, we have a slew of extras and exclusives, things like the ad-free episode of Red Web every single week, first looks at pilot shows anytime that we have them. For example, we released our video podcast over there first. We have Movie Club that we release every other week. We have a new live show called Break Room where we go behind the mystery, behind the scenes, look at our lives, and just hang out with you guys. You can come into the live chat in Discord, and we have this open dialogue with you guys. We had our first one here in March, and it was a lot of fun. We also now will have monthly gaming videos as our bonus video, and we have exclusive discounts at store.redwebpod.com and a whole bunch of other things. And free members also have things to enjoy as well. You can get sneak peeks at episodes every single week. You can vote in Mystery Madness, and every now and then we also do some other things to make sure that even as a free member, you can stay engaged in supporting our community. Again, thank you all so much for supporting this show over the years. It has been an absolute dream to make our passions, our interest in the unknown, our jobs, and that is because of you guys. So again, thank you. This is supported by you specifically. So go to redwebpod.com to become an official member of the task force today, and I'll see you back in the mystery. Moving on now, we have the FBI, of course, entering the picture, and they completed 2 investigations in 2018 from 2 separate divisions. So the first was completed by the Operational Technology Division, and that one was inconclusive. It found no evidence of any sonic attacks or involvement from foreign adversaries. The second investigation was completed by the Behavioral Analysis Unit. Now, this team evaluated previous interviews and patient histories collected from those affected in Cuba, and they concluded that it could be a case of mass psychogenic illness. And we've talked about that before. We've talked about that with the dancing plague.
It's about to say dancing plague.
It's our placebo effect, right? It's exactly what you were on about. Basically saying that the people impacted by this, becoming hyper aware of this, becoming afraid that this might happen, started to psychosomatically, potentially, feel the same symptoms. And it spread that way. While mass psychogenic illness does feel like it could absolutely be an answer here, there is a small wrinkle regarding these FBI investigations. So the New Yorker reported in November of 2018 that these investigations might have been hindered due to the CIA's reluctance to reveal the identity of those affected and federal rules regarding the privacy of medical records, right? Some HIPAA violations.
Okay, yeah.
The FBI would have only been able to work with so many sources, and some of those might have been less accurate than desired because the CIA is holding some of that closer to the chest. And so this might not be as comprehensive of an investigation, hence one being inconclusive and the other kind of relying more on psychogenic illness. Moving now to the next investigation and theory combo. In January of 2019, biologists from the University of California, Berkeley and the University of Lincoln analyzed audio recordings captured by those affected in Cuba. This is the recorded audio clip I referred to earlier, and now I want to talk about it. I want to let you listen to them before I tell you what their very concise theory is. So go ahead, take a listen to that first sound, and we'll go ahead and put this in the podcast as well for any of the task force listening. Just in case, if this is the sound that made people feel sick, I'm going to go ahead and put a little disclaimer here in case you don't want to listen to it. Just jump maybe 30, 40 seconds ahead. But Fredo, go ahead and take a listen to that first clip I sent you.
Interesting. Okay.
You won't get sick. I listened to it on loop. It's my ambiance noise.
Oh, all right. Okay, let's take a listen. That's a very high pitch noise that like it peaks and then sets and then peaks and then sets over again within like a second. It's like
yeah,
like that.
Yeah,
type of thing for those that don't want to like hear it. I mean, like that's just something you could even hear during like a horror movie and the static noise on a TV, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not super unique. I could also see that being some kind of frequency that like triggers these things within a very, 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 very minute population of people.
Like you have a sensitivity to a certain sound or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's possible, you know, like some people get motion sickness more than others. Maybe there's something auditorially that impacts people's like vertigo, their inner ear and all that. Well, these biologists concluded, and this is where I have another sound for you, that the sound heard in these videos did not come from any sort of sonic device, but instead were the sounds of the Indies short-tailed cricket. So go ahead and take a listen to the second sound I sent you. It's a little bit of a YouTube link there. And again, Task Force will put this in here. And if you want to skip ahead, you can.
Oh. All right, let's go listen. Yeah, it's almost 1 for 1. I feel like the sounds are tighter. The highs and the lows have less of a gap. They're a little bit tighter together.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But I could see that for sure. Oh, see, because in like crickets, there are a lot of places.
Crickets, man, they get into places. You're right. Here in Austin, when it's cricket season, they'll get up in your vents and your walls. They're everywhere.
So, okay. All right. Well, see, that kind of, that lends itself to the, you know, the overall mystery of different locations.
Yes, it does.
Weird, though, that's still hitting like, I don't know, or at least initially more government-centric people. And you gotta think that like these crickets are maybe native to these areas and this happens seasonally. So why now?
Yeah, why the mystery if that's the case, right?
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up because that is the wrinkle here. This cricket isn't typically found in Cuba, and it certainly isn't found across the world, you know, across into Europe and everything. I can give some grace because it is local to the south and southeastern portion of the United States. In fact, in Florida especially, you can find these crickets. And if you go down to the Florida Keys, Havana is only 103 miles south, like across a gap of water, of course, but it's near the Florida Keys. So maybe these crickets accidentally ended up on a boat. Maybe they caught a ride. Maybe a counter spy had a pocket full of crickets, popped them in the room. We never know. You know,
it's just true.
Bam, crickets.
Crickets.
But you're right. I think you're onto something with the idea of like, well, what about the international incidents, you know? And that's where I kind of want to keep going back to the mass psychogenic illness. Did this start with something more grounded, like the crickets? And then did it expand because it was capturing the attention and fear of other intelligence agents across the world? My question is, do our Floridian listeners ever hear these crickets and do they ever feel these kind of symptoms, you know?
Yeah.
Because I've heard a lot of crickets before and certainly don't want to sit in a room with a cricket because it does start to get grating. It's like its own form of torture or something.
Yeah, it's not a pleasant sound. It get very annoying.
Yeah.
It can be a background noise, like, you know, where it's if you're hanging out and there's music or it's a party or you're distracted. But if you're just sitting there, just listening. Yeah.
Right. Trying to sleep and you just hear the cricket in the room.
Yeah.
But I guess I am very curious to see like the connection between this sound and the symptoms. But maybe that's just why it's so mysterious, is that, you know, this is a really interesting theory. But to me, the biggest gap here is maybe not the cricket to symptom pathway or the cricket to symptom to mass psychogenic pathway, right? It is instead the source of this recording. You know, AP News is saying that they had received this recording from what some of the U.S. Embassy workers heard during the unnerving incidents, as they called them. But otherwise, we don't really have a lot of clarity on where this sound comes from. I don't want to question the validity of it because I can't pretend to be an expert on this particular sound, though they do say if you listen to the recording, you're safe. It's not going to cause any harm. But they did then send it to the Navy for them to investigate this. It disseminated publicly for people to kind of analyze. But maybe, right, just for the sake of like thinking about it, maybe the biggest gap is the source of that recording and where that came from. And is that truly the sound that caused the symptoms? At least part of me wants to ask that question, right?
Yes, I agree.
But with that, you know, crickets now behind us, a very interesting theory and perhaps plausible. We have another angle here. So following this, a report was published in December of 2019 by the CDC and given to Congress, but was not released to the public. In this report, they evaluated 95 people who had reported symptoms of Havana Syndrome. However, the report was wholly inconclusive. The CDC reported that they could not identify how or why Havana Syndrome occurred, nor could they identify any effective treatments. So they cited the lack of data, inconsistencies in medical records, and a large wait time between symptoms and testing that would likely cause inaccurate results. Then in 2021, neurologist Robert Below was quoted by BuzzFeed saying, quote, essentially, the CDC is saying they have no idea what happened in Cuba, end quote.
Yep.
I do gotta appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
They're saying, listen, there's holes in the data gathering here.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta appreciate that. Just being upfront. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's you know, it's not what you want to hear, but
sure,
at least you're getting something.
Right. It's not the bedside manner you want from a doctor.
Yes.
You know. Oh, we don't know.
No clue.
End of thought. You know. But the honesty is appreciated, and either way, I think, you know, it helps solidify the intrigue. Right. It is why I think this topic will have staying power. I think there are relative conclusions here, but there will always be those who keep going, we don't know.
Yes.
I'm not sure, and keep theorizing, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just the nature of things.
Absolutely. And no, I love an answer just as much as the next person, but you know what? I just gotta be analytical about it.
Right.
So, 2 more investigation analysis theory combo wombos here. So, in a report released in December of 2020, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, or NASEM, N-A-S-E-M, released a report on Havana Syndrome after being commissioned by the State Department. Their report stated that while they came to 4 possible causes for the syndrome, their report should not be taken as conclusive, given, once again, the lack of evidence provided. So, in order of likelihood, here are the 4 possible causes. Radio frequency energy, toxic chemicals, Fredo, I know you're waiting for it, infectious diseases, and psychological issues. So the committee concluded that after evaluating the symptoms, they could cite previous studies from Western and Soviet sources that would provide support for the radio frequencies theory, and for that to be the culprit. Many of the symptoms provided by the victims were consistent with radio frequency effects. They looked into whether the chemicals included in the insecticide in the area used in Havana could cause this, and while they might, they ultimately concluded that it was unlikely because of the amount of chemicals necessary to cause this type and this level of reaction would be quite high, therefore very obvious, and it would probably hit a broader populace than just the very specific dozen U.S. intelligence agents, right?
Thank you, because that's what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? If it affects you that much, there'd be a trace of something, and then why is it so isolated?
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, I'm glad someone with some weight with their words is like, okay, hey, so let me just go ahead and break this down a little bit.
I appreciate the not lack of fully considering everything, and also not the high level of confidence on a flimsy, thin, non-backed theory, which we see all the time. Another thing the committee considered was if the Zika virus, if you remember that one, the Zika virus common to the region at the time, could produce these symptoms. However, they deemed that it was highly unlikely. Now, the committee stated that they would require much more research to be concluded before they could confidently say that it was definitively radio frequencies leading to the direct cause of Havana Syndrome. The committee also speculated that those affected could have also experienced what's called persistent postural perception dizziness, or PPPD. So this is a functional vestibular disorder that can be triggered by stress, anxiety, vestibular migraines, repeated exposure to motion, by like a boat or car, which one might if going to Cuba, head injuries, among other things. Like all of these things can kind of result in this long-lasting feeling of dizziness or unsteadiness. It's more than just vertigo. PPPD is like, it's almost as if vertigo lasts or has phases for a long chronic period of time, not just a short window.
That sounds so annoying.
Yeah. And it can develop later in life. It can be, again, triggered by all sorts of things, stress, anxiety, to name a few, that a lot of intelligence agents are certainly going to feel. And to kind of conclude, ultimately they found that they could not rule out other psychological conditions that might be at play here. And they believed that a variety of conditions could be the reason why each case of Havana Syndrome varied in symptoms and severity. Now to move on to the analysis of media and the media reports leading all the way up to today, here in 2025. So in 2020, media outlets began to report that both the Biden and Trump administrations believed that Russia was to blame for these outbreaks of Havana Syndrome. However, Russia has, of course, denied any involvement in the attacks. Getting more specific, there was a New York Times article published in October of 2020 that reported it was widely believed by scientists, CIA officers, and diplomats that the victims' brains were damaged using a weapon producing microwave radiation. So for added context, in the 1970s and 1980s, the USSR was known to aim microwave beams at the US Embassy. However, the exact motive for the beams was never clear. It's suspected that the intention was perhaps to interfere with U.S. intelligence equipment, any sort of radio signals coming in and out of these U.S. embassies they wanted to interfere with, but many think that maybe this microwave beam thing, whatever they're using, might have been more intended for the humans to create confusion, damage their brains, all sorts of sinister plots, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And with that in mind, I want to talk about a very specific case. So in 2024, an investigation completed by The Insider introduced a woman named Joy, the wife of a U.S. Embassy official who experienced what could be concluded as Havana Syndrome. She described a sharp, painful ringing in her ear which caused her to promptly vomit. So Joy said she looked out her home and she could see a tall, thin man waiting by his car. And it seems that once he noticed that Joy had seen him, he promptly got in his car and drove off. 3 years later now, Joy was shown a photo of a Russian operative and identified him as the same man that she saw waiting outside her home when she was feeling these symptoms. This Russian operative was a known member of what's called Unit 29155, an assassination and sabotage squad of Moscow's military intelligence sector. The investigation by The Insider found that members of the same unit were recognized for their work and advancements in, quote, non-lethal acoustic weapons, end quote, which are essentially radio frequency and sound-based energy devices used to alter a victim's brain. So basically, the media is building a story now, both by experience, but also from claims of scientists, CIA officers, and diplomats that whoever was behind this, likely the Russians per the Biden and Trump administrations, are using microwave or sonic devices outside these embassies to either cause confusion or in some way alter or damage the brains of U.S. embassy officials. And that is terrifying. I hate that concept.
Yeah, I don't like that concept at all. At all. It's like a deep spy movie. It's sounding like.
Yeah.
Don't like it. Not a fan, for sure. That'd be wild.
Yeah.
I don't think it's absolutely crazy for something like that to happen. The Russians have done some wild things.
Sure.
But man, what a move on their part if that's what their play is. But I mean, to what end though?
I don't know.
You know,
like, I don't know if it's like a full on like subtle attack. That's like, I don't know, man. It just feels like I hate the idea that there's a weapon out there that could boil my brain in my sleep.
Yep.
And then I wake up feeling ill. I got a headache. Do I have like, is my IQ lowered? Is my critical thinking lowered? Is that the end goal? Is it to create panic and fear? Which obviously by creating the Havana Syndrome, assuming that this theory is the one, right? Mm-hmm. By creating Havana Syndrome in some way, it does strike fear into other agents around the world. Like, is it more of a psychological attack? Or are they after that ripple effect? I don't know. All of that is so eerie to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's governments and deep spy stuff, and it's just levels of thinking and disruption. I mean, it could also be, I don't know, there could be some kind of conference that's tying them all together. Ooh. Or some kind of behind the scenes negotiations going on or whatever. So like it could be something where the government's not telling us how they're linked, but they are linked.
Yeah.
It's just wild. It just, that's a deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, dude. It's possible. We don't know. It would be interesting if someone had put up their conspiracy board, all their photos, and drew all the agents back to one spot.
Yes.
If there's a reason why these ones were being attacked versus just any U.S. Embassy agents or what have you. But man, I don't know. Either way, that theory is super, super spooky. But now jumping to January of 2025, CNN releases an article stating that they had new information that could indicate Havana Syndrome was caused by, quote, a novel weapon, end quote, in the hands of a foreign country. Of course, there weren't many specifics added as it seems that this is all still very classified, but now you have it all the way up to modern day. News media is pointing out this mysterious, novel, i.e. sonic or radio or microwave frequency weapons. Now, according to the article, an unnamed intelligence agency stated that there is a chance that this novel weapon has been in development for many years and has been tested over that time frame on small groups of individuals like those affected by Havana Syndrome. So maybe that helps answer your question. Maybe this is just some sort of morbid, unethical experiment on the unwilling, just to see what happens.
Right.
And they go, well, let's just target an adversary, use it on them, and then study what happens.
It very well could be. And I don't like you were saying earlier, I don't like the sound of that.
I don't want to be a lab rat. I don't want to be part of some sort of plot. I just, sometimes I just want to kick back, read a comic, play some Marvel Rivals.
Yes, sir.
Put a puzzle together and not be confused and rattled and forced to vomit, with the brain melter.
Just kind of live my life cozy.
Yeah. So, now that's a lot of intrigue. That's a lot of like, right? But this is where I want to kind of deflate the thing a little bit because I really like to stay grounded. I really want to approach a lot of these mysteries with as much honest conversation, just like layman conversation that you and I have, but also some analysis and try to really approach it all. And whatever we can't address, that's where the mysteries lie and that's where my curiosity is piqued. But in this very same time frame, okay, we're talking about all these weapons, these novel weapons. January 2025, AP News reported on an assessment released by the National Intelligence Council. This was a very long paper. I did go read a lot of it. Came out in December, or it was written December 2024, but I believe it became public in January. In short, they indicate that 5 of the 7 U.S. intelligence agencies concluded that it's, quote, very unlikely that a foreign adversary was behind the injuries, end quote. So that does still leave the 2 other agencies that say that a foreign adversary may have developed or even deployed a weapon responsible for these injuries.
Yep.
But you also have the other 5 indicating we don't believe that a foreign adversary is behind this. Either way, you can jump at it either way. You can have your opinions, your dispositions. You can go majority rule. But I think at the end of the day, what makes this it will be a long-standing mystery, is that all of these agencies are coming to the table going, we don't have all the information necessary. There's just holes in the reports and the tests. And so my mind goes, okay, well, there's something at least kind of calming about the idea that this isn't some sort of adversarial attack, but it's a non-zero chance.
I agree.
But to conclude, I kind of want to recap where we've been now. And this isn't an exhaustive list because some of these theories were smaller but not substantiated. But to recap as many of the theories as I can recall, right? We have simply, we don't know, or inconclusive. Secondly, we have mass psychogenic illness. We've got ultrasonic sound interference, right? Those waves interfering with one another. A specialized sound weapon or microwave weapon.
Wild.
Of course, we have wild, very sci-fi. We have Indy's short-tailed crickets. Maybe it's just a little animal, a little guy.
Right, I forgot about the crickets because we were so deep into like, it could be the Russians.
Right. This could be just When You Wish Upon a Star Jiminy Cricket style.
Yeah, that little guy.
That little guy. Radio frequency energy, which again, not to bring the ghost back into the picture. You know I love a little ghost or two. But like there is something with the electromagnetic frequencies, radio frequencies, and the ongoing understanding of how those play on the mind. You also have persistent postural perception dizziness, again, that PPPD I talked about, and then the idea of toxins, chemicals, or viral illnesses in the environment. Each of them has their own merit, their own intrigue, their own conspiracy behind them. But I don't know, before I kind of really fully conclude here, I'm curious, where's your mind at? We're not going to have an answer. I don't know if we ever will. This might be a thing of release the JFK tapes. And like 50 years from now, we say, release the Havana Syndrome tapes. But I'm curious, where's your mind at?
Dude, I have no idea because none of them quite line up the way I want them to.
Yeah.
Like the crickets, it's like, it's not going to be native to a lot of different areas. The Russians just seems like such a like deep hole of like, there's the government and they're testing this weapon, etc., etc. I don't know. I don't see it. I can see the Russians testing it on themselves and then using it as a mass weapon or something like that. Or just a government in general, but not necessarily take it out to the field like that early. It seems it seems kind of wasteful in terms of a surprise attack or potential.
Sure. Yeah, I can certainly see two young 19-year-old bucks just going, hey, try this on me. Whoa, that makes me feel weird. Try it on you. Just using the
Exactly. So I'm not like quite sure where it lands.
Yeah. I think, and this is where, I love a good theory. We talked about severance on our Patreon page, for goodness sake. I love to get weird with it. It's the whole point of this podcast sometimes. But here, just as a regular dude who loves mysteries, I feel like there's a lot of elements here. I feel like mass psychogenic illness might be how it spread more internationally, and we might have a pretty mundane answer for how it began. I think there's something to the intermodulation distortion happening between this espionage equipment, this spy equipment. But I also think there's something to the crickets. Maybe it began with something silly and something small. The crickets aren't regional to the Cuban area, but they're not far, so they could make it there. And maybe that's how it started, and it spread to others around the world because of the fear of the unknown. And I also can't fully discount the Russian microwave weapons. If we know for a fact that in the 60s and 70s, the USSR is testing weapons like this, then sure, maybe it's happening now in 2016, or maybe it's completely unrelated. It's hard to rule it out or in.
Yeah.
But I can't fully, I've seen some pretty wild government experiments both here and abroad over the last 100 years. There's a lot of, think of MK Ultra just to begin with, right?
True.
And so I don't put it past the government to try that stuff, but do I think that's what's at play here? Maybe. I don't know. But I do think that we have kind of an easy to understand beginning, whether it be that weapon or a cricket or an accidental ultrasonic interference. And then the rest is that mass psychogenic illness of, oh my God, we don't know what it is. I really hope it's not me, because that's exactly like I am that CIA agent and I'm here in, X country.
Right.
Maybe, oh no, now I'm feeling it, right? And we have seen that happen. Or PPPD. I think that was really interesting too. And I think that's what's going to be the issue, as I just said half of them, right?
Yeah,
but I wonder if it's a combo, Now, to kind of conclude, in the years that have followed the initial attacks, no investigation has come back fully conclusive. It remains a mystery as to how these people were targeted, or if they were targeted, and what exactly happened to make them feel these symptoms. It's widely believed that the secrecy and the lack of cooperation between government agencies has hindered the success of investigations, leaving, of course, a mystifying condition and all of its victims in the wake. And that is the Havana Syndrome mystery. I think we will hear about this throughout our lifetimes. I will be very curious because it seems like some people are still experiencing it now. It's not like it's done. So I'm very curious.
I don't think it's done. I feel like it might be something that's like uncovered, 5-10 years from now. But it's wild because like the structure of this mystery is really cool. But also at the same time, it's one of those rare mysteries where I can't subscribe to any of the theories. It just isn't quite enough. I'm not disengaged from them completely because they're not, it's not like aliens came down, started zapping frequencies in people's heads. It's not like that far-fetched, but like I can't like attach myself to one of them. Usually I could like pick one and go, okay, I feel like maybe this,
I know,
but I can't choose one. Like I just can't.
I'm with you. I feel sometimes guilty coming out of these, like, these are deeply unknown mysteries. And I'm like, opinion. But I don't know, man. I'm totally with you. Sometimes I find solace in being able to go, yeah, this feels right. Of course, it's unsubstantiated. But I could see at least half of these making a lot of sense.
Exactly.
Having some sort of, merit to them. But yeah. Task Force, let us know what you think. As always, we have our Patreon exclusive Discord channel where in that there is a theories section where you guys go off. You guys talk back and forth on each of these episodes. We love to know what you guys think. The hive mind of the Task Force is itself just a giant brain.
Yes, it is. A lot of wrinkles.
Okay? But yeah, you can sign up for that by going to redwebpod.com. Of course, you get all sorts of those goodies that come with it. Ad-free podcast, monthly exclusive, store discounts. Of course, Fredo, if you want to talk about Movie Club, we also have that every other week.
You already know. We're part mystery, part movies, baby. That's exactly how we give a visual to a lot of things that we talk about here. And it ranges everywhere from classics to just absolute terrible movies that are fun to watch. So you have a boatload of movies at this point because we're just stacking up episodes.
Oh, yeah.
That you can either watch along or just listen to us break down the plot.
Absolutely. What, a library of maybe 16 plus. I might not be doing the math right, but as soon as you sign up, you get access to all of those. And I think even in January, we did a bonus Red Web episode for you guys on the Jersey drones and the theories behind all of that, if you remember that happening in December. But yeah, lots happening. redwebpod.com. With that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.